Hey, welcome everyone. Fridays with Freddie. Fred, we were talking about wanting to do a session on this idea of reading the room. How do you read the room and deliver messages appropriately as a leader? Because a lot can go wrong if it's not done right. So set this up for us and let's talk it through.
Yeah, I think the reason why we're coming up with this particular topic, Joe, is because Beyond and the people at Beyond, we run into clients and we run into leaders where when we walk in, sometimes it's very clear what needs to get done. I've seen clients where a president has a very ambitious vision, but the CIO is not able to translate that vision into a workable vision for IT. Let's call it marching orders. So that's why, I call it reading the room because, your president wants something very, very different than what you think that they need. So I'm always a little bit mystified why some people can see it and others can't. But at the same time, there is an opportunity there as well.
So let's break that down. One of the things you mentioned was, and maybe the scenario we're looking at here, the way you're setting it up is maybe there's a new president who's come in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they've got a vision and they've done their listening sessions and tours. And now they've come back with somewhat of a framework of, hey, here's 4 areas or 3 areas or 6 areas we're going to focus on. And several of them are going to have a direct tie back to technology. And you're saying if that CIO or that technical team is not ready and prepared for change and anticipating change and eager and excited about change, that vision can kind of fall flat. And hey, this side thinks we need a new SIS, and that side thinks we need to basically look at our entire technology stack differently and be talking about AI and a bunch of other things. Is that kind of one of the scenarios where you see reading the room becomes an issue because both sides are in some way not able to communicate what they need done and why it's important, and so it's kind of like this. And then when we're on some of these calls, or the other day we had a group of technology leaders from a bunch of different schools together, and the number one thing we heard was, well, I'm not getting support for the things I want to do. I've got all these ideas, but my leadership isn't supporting me.
Yeah, exactly. And again, which just goes back to one of our previous podcasts. It's hard to get people excited about a project unless it's your project, right? So with enterprise projects, a lot of IT projects, one of the characteristics is there's a group of people that it impacts directly. And you can excite those people because, hey, I'm going to get X, Y, and Z out of these projects. But a university as a whole and a leadership team as a whole and a president, they're not going to get excited about individual projects. Because again, you need to be able to tell the right story. You need to cast a vision that people can support and want to buy into. I think it's extremely important, right? And that's why we said that one of the 5 skills or the mindset shifts that IT leaders need to have is you need to become a good storyteller.
Yeah. So in that realm, so let's say, let's play it out this way. I'm the technology leader and you're the president, let's say, the new incoming president. I have some things I want to get done. You've got some things you want to get done, right? The question is, where do we align and where are we misaligned? But in both cases, you're saying we need to be able to not just look at each of our things as piecemeal little projects, but how does it all tie together into one comprehensive strategy? And how do I turn that into a story that in some way engages you? Because you're my customer, right? I have to convince you this is the direction to go so you can go talk to the board and whatever it is and get us the money to get it done.
Right.
And in the president's case, the president has to say, I want to go that way. Here's why we should go that way. Here's what's beneficial to all of us to go, and here's what we get for getting there, kind of telling their version of the story. Do you find that a lot of times with incoming presidents, though, there's a little bit of this with the president's vision and what they want to do and what technology wants to or is willing to do?
Yeah, I think so. And of course, we can't generalize, obviously, but we do see it enough to see a particular trend where, and again, we've spoken about this in the, in previous podcasts, being good at your operational job. So meaning the lights are on, your tickets are solved, your system is secured, your system is scalable, you got the right people. Even if you have all of that in place, that still does not necessarily translate into you being the right organization with the right leadership and the right organizational posture that can enable the vision of the president. And that sometimes is the tragedy of the commons, right? You believe you're doing everything right, and to a certain extent, you are. But for example, we have, one of our clients, and which is a very dynamic president. The way she calls it, I need to ride horses,
Yeah.
right? Right.
Hmm.
I need to write. It's not about you being good. I know you're great. Great. It's wonderful. Everything is on. I go. It's like electricity. I come in every day. Electricity works. The water works. Wonderful. That's not what I need. A new building. You know what I mean?
Right.
Are you the person that's going to help me design the architect the building? I'm not just looking for an engineer. I'm looking for an architect. Perhaps that's a good analogy to use.
So yeah, that's a good picture, right? And I think that's a good question every technology leader should be asking themselves is in the context of what the president and leadership want to accomplish, have I aligned the right strategy for my shop to that? And I think that's a healthy exercise to look at from a people perspective, from an organizational structure perspective, from a strategy perspective, and what we're outputting. Because to your point, if all we're outputting is the lights are on and we're safe and we haven't been hacked and financial aid can process financial aid well, and you may be hitting 30 to 50% of your quote of the expectations. And maybe
Right.
that's why you're not being invited in for a seat at the table every time there's a strategic conversation, because you're not seen as strategic. You're seen
Correct.
as tactical.
Yeah. And then we're getting back to that, how do you rebrand, and how do you go through a personal transformation, if you want to call it that, which is, I point people to the last podcast that we did, which is, it's important. Innovation is a muscle. Being able to push back and to shape the organization and the people into a direction that you want them to go into, that's a skill. That's a skill you can learn. It's a skill that, the only way you're going to learn it is to actually do it. So that's why we always say, take some calculated risks, have some interesting projects, small projects that you can start seeing, okay, where are the boundaries of the capabilities of my organization? Yeah, but we do see it enough for us to actually talk about it. Whereas like some people have a hard time reading that room.
So in this idea of reading the room, are we essentially saying to our technology leaders and to our executives, look, read the room of who is in the room today. So if I'm the CIO or the deputy or I'm a leader in the technology organization looking at my CIO, you're just looking a couple levels up to whoever you report through or to. How are they visionary, entrepreneurial, or are they not? Because if the person who's setting vision is visionary, entrepreneurial, risk-taking. You had said last time, think like an entrepreneur. Oh no, think like an innovator, act like an entrepreneur. So if that's who's in the room, then what adjustments do you need to make to fit that so that you're not a hindrance to that vision? But on the flip side, maybe you are more of that innovator who thinks like an entrepreneur and acts like an entrepreneur, but the person who controls the purse strings or who controls the strategy is kind of a lights on president. They just want to check in and go shake hands, kiss babies, and hang out with the provost, and that's about it. So in both cases, it's who am I dealing with here and what adjustments do I need to make? And one of the scenarios I wanted to talk through with you today is, let's use the scenario where the president appears to be thinking more entrepreneurially or having a little bit more of an innovation mindset, because maybe the numbers have shifted, or the board's putting pressure on them. We got to grow, or their brand new president coming in with a pretty big vision. How do I adjust my shop? If I'm the technology leader, what are some adjustments I need to make to my shop or my personnel to meet the needs of a person who is thinking innovatively and acting entrepreneurially as my leader?
Joe, you developed that the bossy entrepreneurial
The
DNA.
framework, yeah.
The framework, right? And so one of the characteristics of that is same as Myers-Briggs to a certain extent. It's like, hey, know yourself. What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? So what I see a lot of leaders do is they want to have a certain template of what they want. All my people should conform to this template. All my people should be able to do X, Y, and Z. I don't think that's necessarily true. People have strengths and weaknesses, and you want to amplify the strengths and bracket the weaknesses. So don't put people into a certain position or expect certain things from them. And when I say position, I don't mean position as in the position that they're doing. But for example, a job, a little project or a task to give them, that's just not their wheelhouse. Like, for example, and I've used this example before, I had a unbelievably good developer, but I learned very quickly, you need to keep him in a cube and let him do what he's good at. You don't want to put him in a room in front of executives where he tells them, look, all these questions you're asking me are pretty dumb.
You're all idiots.
Basically, he cut 99% close to actually making the statement.
Yeah.
And some people were very upset that I said, look, this is on me. I kind of know him well enough that I shouldn't have put him into that position in front of these people without having adequately prepared him and perhaps saying, hey, by the way, even if you're right, just can't do that, right? So I think number one, know your people, and then start identifying people that can actually help you bring that vision forward. Now, something that's interesting that I see many times, especially at larger state schools or larger private schools where they have some funding. You have a new CIO that comes in, spends 2 or 3 years, battling the good fight, and then all of a sudden you see something pop up on Indeed, like, hey, looking for a deputy CIO. And then if you read the deputy CIO position, it's really like, okay, I want to offload all the operational stuff, so I can focus on innovation and change. That's great. That's wonderful, right? I mean, I think that's a good strategy. But I think you can switch that around as well, right? If you're really good at the operational side as the CIO, and maybe the innovation angle, I know it's part of the job title, but let's say the innovation angle is not your strength.
Or whether it's idea generation or risk acceptance or future focus, right? Or kind of that hunger to tinker. If that's not innate to you,
get somebody in there who loves to do that.
Yeah, you're still going to get the win, right? Because you're still the boss. You're still going to get the win as a department. But I think that's an excellent point. So again, new incoming president, let's say, or a president who's got a brand new vision to really do some transformative things. You're saying start as the number one leader in that department. You got to start by saying, what seat should I sit in? Yeah, I know I have a title, but what seat on this new bus do I need? Do I need to be the one just making sure the engine's running, or do I need to be the one charting the navigation forward?
Yep.
And then who are my people? And out of my people, who are the more innovative, creative, kind of Musk-like thinkers? And then who are the more keep the lights on? I'm 35 years in, 25 years in, I know this SIS.
Yep.
So I see where you're going with this. Start with yourself, assess yourself honestly, then assess your team. I think you're right. Our Bossy tool is a great way to do it because we're not charging people for it. So I'll link the link in our comments below. People can just go take the assessment for themselves. And then if you want your team assessed, just contact you or me. We'll give you a link that tracks your whole team. And again, we're not going to charge you for it. We want you to have the insight. So let's say you've done the assessment and you now have your aha of the buckets of talent you have. Now you're saying, be willing to reshape the organization to now deliver to this new vision, right?
Yeah.
Is that a heavy lift? Is that something like, oh my gosh, you guys are talking about an organizational change? Is this a reorg? People are going to freak out? Or is it, I find people embrace it because we're building it around their individual strengths and talents. What are your...
Right, that's exactly it. I mean, like, we all know that every organization has people in it. Sometimes they're sitting in the back, quiet, but they do the work of 3 people, right? 80-20 rule. So ideally, you're going to find some folks internally that you can give them that task, start small. Again, take something very innovative or take something that's been a long-standing request or a challenge and have them go solve that. But in solving that, start putting in the kind of the agile team structure, if you want to call it that, and just start. We always say just start. So is it a heavy lift? It depends. It depends on it depends on the organization. That's why it's an art and a science, Joe. It really is an art and a science, right? Your leaders need to understand that. Yes, you can have all the frameworks in the world. Hey, I'm an ITIL shop, I'm an COBIT shop, and I have an enterprise architect, and they're TOGAF certified, and for every process and every request, I have a TPS report, and say, great, wonderful. That still might not get you where you need to go. So it depends. So I would say it depends. Is it a heavy lift to start? No, it's never a heavy lift to start.
Yeah, I don't think it's a heavy. The reason I don't think it's a heavy lift is because if you're making this about people, again, you've read the room, and there's a new direction we need to go in as an organization. And if you come back to your team and say, look, team, there's a new direction. Our customer is looking for something different. So I want to design this new chapter around you, around each of you, your strengths, your capabilities, your passion. So help me understand what your strengths and passions are. Let's do a couple of assessments. I think people are going to embrace it and love it because it's about them. It's not like the UK went and drew out a new org chart and, showed up on Monday's meeting going, here's how it's going to be. You're engaging them in a process of transforming the division or the department for a reason. There's a story behind the change, or there's a reason for the change. This goes back to your storytelling. And then you're bringing people along, giving them the right roles, and you may surprise the heck out of them by saying, by the way, I've assessed myself, and I'm not the risk taker innovator of our group, but Fred is. So Fred, I want you to do some sort of an idea contest, find out whatever you want to do. And Fred says, hey, I'm going to set up a little web page. I'm going to invite the whole school to come submit ideas and problems they want solved. And they're going to do little hackathons. And you're like, great, Fred, go do that. Here's the boundaries within which to do that. Because that's not my thing. That's not my passion. It's yours.
Right.
And by the way, Jill and Sam and Sarah want to be part of your little crazy crew.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make sure we still run a world-class shop that's doing the things it needs to do. And oh, by the way, we do have to replace our SIS. So I'll be the executive sponsor there and focus there while you guys still keep the innovation engine going.
Right.
Is that far out there, or is that doable in higher ed?
No, it's absolutely doable. And what's unfortunate is that we're sitting at the front, right? So we have a view of a variety of schools. So it's always interesting to see that we have one customer that has embraced this innovation to such an extent that they're having big vendors, the big names, Google, Apple, Microsoft, whatever, pay for technology, pay for entire degrees, pay for curriculums, and have a network of like an innovation network basically that they have access to, that this particular leader builds. And then there's other schools that are like, well, I don't know what to do. Paradoxically, a lot of times the schools that don't know what to do are the smaller schools who would benefit from that the most, building that community network, building that vendor network, and just starting to think entrepreneurial. Hey, I'm a startup. I want to do X, Y, and Z. How can you help my college to do that?
Interestingly enough, though, Fred, if I'm tracking correctly on which school you're talking about here, that CIO is not leading the charge on innovation.
Right.
Isn't lighting the barn on fire going, woo, here's all they're just keeping the lights on. They're just running the shop. I mean, they're under-resourced, so he's like trying to figure out how to get 4 people to do the job of 50. But he's figured out the people within the institution to surround himself with, who are the risk takers and the crazy ones. Right. And he has said, okay, you're my customer. I've read the room. You're the customer. You go do the crazy stuff and tell me what you need from us, and I'll make sure we can deliver to the best of our ability.
Joe, that's a very good point. I have an old friend of mine, old colleague of mine, always used to say when we would interview a lot of people in higher education that work in IT and the different departments, administrative departments. And why do you love working in IT? Oh, because, I'm helping the students. And he used to say, no, you're not. Your job is not helping the students. And I understand what you're saying in principle. Yes, you're at a higher education institution. So it's so great. We're doing all these wonderful things so that students can build a career, get educated, etc. Sure, I get that. But don't ever think that you're the one helping the students, because then you can go home every night thinking, oh my God, I spent the whole day helping the students, even though it's not. You're running payroll, right? Mm-hmm. But if your job is to support the frontline staff that actually interact with the students, that actually need to make an impact on the students, but you don't understand that that's your job, that's a problem. Right. So, no. So you need to be able to go home and say, okay, the people that are in the front line, I helped them today. I enabled them today. Now, I know it's a little bit of a mean take, but I think knowing where you sit and knowing who your customer is very important. So in this particular case that you're talking about, the president kind of tapped somebody, hey, I want you to lead the innovation charge. And the IT department rightly saw, okay, great. So my job is not to compete with this individual. Right. My job is to support that individual or that department. Maybe we can leave it with one last example, Joe. This is a real example, just to bracket this for some of our viewers. I got a call from a high-level executive at a fairly large school in the Midwest. New executive does his 90-day plan, his walking tour, his listening tour, et cetera, et cetera. And he came to me and says, look, Fred, my CIO, he's not cutting it. He's just not very good. And so I said, okay. I said, do me a favor, send me your org chart. See, He said the org chart. I said, but it's specifically the IT org chart. And so I had some names. I did some little research on the background of this particular CIO. I looked at the horses that he had in the IT shop. He had no horses. He had barely enough people for me to keep the lights on.
Right.
And then specifically when I looked at the individual's background, he did not necessarily have the right background to have that innovation muscle, especially in the environment where he's severely constrained by his resources. And then, unfortunately.
And likely, given that your friend who called you was probably thinking, I need innovation, right?
I need innovation, right. So I told him, hey, look, let's not say this person is not good enough. And I mean, it's like, so either you help him get to, or her, to get to that next level, say, okay, be very clear. Don't assume that they understand, right? Because for 2 decades, this person has delivered for that college what they're asking him to do. But now there's new leadership. It's like, well, no, that's not what I'm asking you to do. It's going to take a little transition. It's going to take some coaching or mentorship, whatever, for that person to make that switch. Now, if they can't make that switch, different discussion, right? But sometimes, the right people are not in the right place, but it doesn't mean they're bad or they're not good, or it's like there's a historical precedent.
Yes, it's that whole thing of, are they on the wrong seat? Are they not trained? Do they not have the support? Whatever. Solve for all those things. But to to your point, to summarize, my takeaway is know who your customer is. At the big level, who's your customer? But then even from meeting to meeting, who is in the room? And how do I read that room and deliver my story, my message, my news in a way that, you mentioned the story of your guy, right? Your rock star developer who didn't read the room and didn't know who the customer was in that meeting and upset the apple cart a little bit. Well, how many of us do that even as executives, right? So knowing your customer, reading the room, adjusting to that, and being introspective enough to say, am I really the person who should do it all as far as innovation? Or who are my innovators who I can elevate and task with innovation so I can do what I'm really great at? Or if I'm really great at innovation, chances are I'm terrible at the day-to-day operational stuff. I proved that with my research into entrepreneurial behavior. You can't be both. So which one are you? And then how do you design your organization to support you in getting to where you want to go as you support your customer and where they want to go? I think that's a good challenge.
The storytelling is so important. I mean, it's such an obvious pathway for you to get where you need as a leader, as an IT leader, because nobody's going to respond to you that well when you come in and say, hey, I'm short-staffed, I don't have enough funding, I can't pay my people enough, et cetera, et cetera. It's very hard to get excitement. But create a vision and tell a story around a future is like, hey, here are all the things that we can enable. Wouldn't that be a great future? And people say, oh, great. What do you need? Well, funny you should mention. It's the same conversation, but it's a completely different conversation.
Makes sense.
Yeah. If you're watching this and you're smaller school, lean, short staff, not 100% sure, hey, I know I need to go into a different direction. Not quite sure what that looks like. Perfect. Call us. We'll just have a conversation. I'm just like bossy. This is not about us charging people. It's like, if you need another set of eyes on your organizational challenge, give us a call.
Kind of like your buddy called you and you just did some research for him and gave him some feedback and some ideas. So only thing I'd ask for everyone is we're closing out this session. We don't usually ask for this, but here's our ask. Click the like button, subscribe, tell some of your peers about it. We're looking to build some momentum around this, and you liking it or subscribing lets us know we're heading in the right direction. So that would be a great thing you could do for us, and we'll see you all next time.